614 Startups Nation. Welcome to another episode of the 614 Startups Podcast. My name is Elio Harmon, your host, and I'm very excited to have you here for another episode. I have a very special guest coming up on the show, Natalie Moretz of Bernstein Private Wealth Management. Before we get to the guest, though, you know we got to do a little bit of news. Exciting times in Columbus, Ohio. I want to kick it off with Path Robotics, all right? Path Robotics raised $56 million for, in quotes, aggressive, all right, expansion of AI-powered welding, all right? Now, so this is a little bit of a joke here, you know, if it was aggressive expansion of AI into something else, maybe we would be a little bit concerned, but because it's into welding, hey, you can relax. Now, maybe this is not my grandpappy's welding machine, but I've been seeing welding machines on the floor of automotive manufacturing plants since what, like the 70s or something? So what's going on here with Path Robotics that warrants them being able to raise $56 million for making these welding machines more or smarter? Now, here's the quote that I really took away from this, that now I'm starting to see why this company may be on the rise. And the quote says, we're really trying to add a layer of intelligence to robots that allows them to learn from failure, that allows them to see what they're looking at, and to try to give robots the ability to add context to the operation that they're doing. Man, listen, those three things: learn from failure, right? Do robots fail? I didn't know that. What's the failure rate? But to learn from failure, right, allows them to see. Now, I don't even know if we've cracked the code of how human beings actually see. I mean, naturally, we know how we see, but we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. So what does that mean in terms of robot sight? What are the applications beyond welding to things like autonomous vehicles? Could we be tapping into sight there, right, for applications like that from what Path Robotics is doing? And then give them the ability to add context. All right, so not just doing the work for the doing sake, but maybe the why behind the work. Interesting stuff here from Path Robotics. No wonder we have them growing quickly. From this article, I understand that they've doubled revenue in the last year. So kudos to Path Robotics. Interesting stuff there. All right, I love it. All right, next up, our good friends over at Smile MD, they had an oversubscribed round of funding, and in addition to the $5 million that they raised, they added another $1 million. Listen, the money is pouring in, and congratulations to our friends over at Smile MD. And here's why I think this might be happening right here in the article. Smile MD is a startup enabling in-office dental surgery. So if you've ever had a tooth pulled or something maybe even more complex when it comes to dental surgery, you'd have to go to a surgical center. What seems to be very interesting is maybe they're moving those into the dentist office, right? So it says here, a startup enabling in-office dental surgeries, which saw a demand surge when hospital operating rooms closed, right? So why go to a surgical center? What if there's a way to get it done right there in the dentist's office? So very interesting. Hospitals were shut down. Dental surgery may have been considered elective and not really emergency. And so the move back to the dentist office may be a huge opportunity here for Smile MD. So congratulations, guys. Keep grinding. I love the work that you're putting in. All right, SEC OK's Zell Capital. All right, this is my guy, Will Zell. I think he's like episode 5 of the 614 Startups Podcast, throwing it all the way back when we were in the basement on East Livingston and Barnett. Will Zell came down. He lives in Bellefontaine, Ohio. He was here in Columbus. He was then the CEO of Nikola Labs. He was one of the very early guests on the show. And this is great news for Nick and the team over at, Will and the team over at Zell Capital. All right, so here was what Will and I talked about a couple of months ago. Zell Capital is actually looking to innovate in the venture capital space opening up the ability for small investors to participate in investment rounds into startups, right? So here's what the article says. For as little as $1,000, everyday investors can buy a stake in the enticing roller coaster world of technology startups, all right? This was one once only reserved, it still is, only reserved for accredited investors. With Zelle Capital, Will Zelle is now opening the opportunity for everyday investors to invest in early stage startups. I'm gonna have Will on the show to talk about Zelle Capital. He is the homie. We have to break this down. I have questions, particularly about ownership. If you scroll down to this article, you know me, I'm Mr. Controversy. I gotta get into who owns this thing, majority shareholders, etc. All right, we understand this is for the little guy, but Will, come on the show. Let's talk about ownership here, all right? Now, next thing, let's talk a little bit about social media. Now, Pareto principle, everybody knows it. Very few people follow it, but it's the 80-20 rule that 20% of your efforts will contribute 80% of your results. Now, when we look at our analytics, that 20% social media platform is LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn is very active and it's growing like crazy. So if you're not following us on LinkedIn, join the community on LinkedIn. That's where we get most of our engagement. That's where most of our conversations happen. We would love to have you as part of our LinkedIn family. And of course, we just dropped this Investor Watch, Nationwide Ventures. Nationwide is going crazy right now. They have tons of dry powder, $350 million. They just expanded that fund and made some big investments into Beam Dental and Health Gorilla. And I think they just joined a round for a company out in San Francisco that does extended warranties. So big shout out to Nationwide Ventures. They are a sponsor of this podcast, all right? And last but not least, events. We don't have any events on our website right now. The events calendar is a little bit, waiting for folks to send us stuff. So if you have an event, send it over to us. We will get it on our events calendar on the website. But these are our good friends over at Collaborate and Elevate. Manny, I owe you a phone call, my brother. But they're going to interview a guy who we've had a long relationship with, and unfortunately I haven't had a chance to have Aaron on the show, but Aaron Westbrook of Form 5 Prosthetics. I really love this, 3D printing of prosthetic limbs. It's going to be a live Q&A, so go on Eventbrite and check this out. Collaborate and Elevate presents Aaron Westbrook. All right, now you guys are up to date with the things I think you need to be up to date on. It's not expansive or anything, but this just brings you up to speed with what's happening in the community. All right, now stay tuned for my very special interview with Natalie Moretz of Bernstein. Enjoy. $614 Startups Nation, welcome to another episode of the $614 Startups Podcast. My name is Elio Harmon, your host, and welcome to another episode. I have a very special guest, a good friend of the show, Natalie Moretz, Vice President of Bernstein Private Wealth Management. Natalie, welcome to the show.
Elio, thank you so much.
All right, I've been looking forward to this. You are a newcomer to Columbus, and it's always great to have a newcomer on the show. So how long have you been in Columbus at this point?
I moved to Columbus in December of 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic, in the winter, and I'm just finding my groove here. I'm so excited to be here. The community has been so welcoming, and I'm excited to hit the ground running, and get back to meeting people in person as soon as possible.
That's great. Now, the firm you represent, it might be new to Columbus, but you guys have been around for a very long time. So why Columbus is the next city that Bernstein decided to expand to?
Yeah, and so Bernstein has been in business for over 50 years, and we have had a presence in Columbus. We are in the process of growing our Columbus office, which is part of the reason that I'm here. And we're focused on Columbus because we see tremendous growth opportunity in the city. So between the startup scene, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the huge nonprofit community here, the Fortune 500 companies, we just see a ton of opportunity in this area. And we're really looking forward to digging in and, being valuable in the community and really making a difference.
All right. Now, one of the things I admire about you is that you hit the ground running with getting out there and networking and getting to know people. I got this email because I get emails now all the time from folks who listen to the show and want to connect. But you reached out to me and you said, hey, love what you guys are doing. Let's talk. Let's find ways that we can work together. So for people who don't know you, right, you haven't had a chance to inbox them or chat with them like you have with me. Why don't you share a bit of your personal background so folks can get to know you?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, those kind of words, and for the invitation. So I'll start with, I'm from Iowa. I grew up in rural Iowa in a farming community, part of a large extended family. I went to the University of Iowa as an undergrad, go Hawks, which might be really taboo to say in Columbus. Worked in the nonprofit sector and in higher education out of undergraduate school. Went back to graduate school and studied nonprofit management. I have a master's in public administration from the University of Washington. Coming out of graduate school, I joined Citigroup, and I was in Chicago at the time. And I worked for Citi for 12 years, and I did community development, lending, and investing. And I focused on affordable housing finance. And a lot of my client base was made up of real estate entrepreneurs and nonprofit real estate developers, which is what brought me to Bernstein and to Bernstein Private Wealth Management. So within Bernstein, we manage assets for nonprofit organizations from within our private client group. So in the same group where we're working with business owners, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, we're also serving our nonprofit clients. And that's because a lot of our private clients have established private foundations to facilitate their charitable giving. And working with mission-driven people, whether that's in the nonprofit sector or people that are just fueled by a mission to create something awesome in business, is what I love doing. So that's how I came to Bernstein, and that's why I love what I do. I love working with people that are just blazing their own trail, and whether that's in the social sector or whether that's in business, those are my kind of people.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is how many times my day job, right, at National Church Residences overlaps with the founders that I'm talking to or investors that I'm talking to on this show. Entrepreneurship is kind of the term du jour, if that's even the right term I'm using, right? Everybody loves entrepreneurs. Everybody wants to be a founder. The biggest people in the news right now are the people starting companies. But let's talk about building a career with a company, right? We're going to talk about founders and entrepreneurs and all that stuff. But there's a certain segment, right, that, they would be best served building a career within an organization and being an intrapreneur. I want to explore building a career within a company. What have you found are the keys to growing within a company?
That's a great question. I would say being willing to try something new. I feel a lot of people go into companies, they may go into a role that may or may not have anything to do with their previous role or their college major. And I think when you get into a company and you're able to show that you're someone that can learn, someone that's adaptable, someone that's flexible, it opens a lot of doors for you. And it also helps you build relationships across the company, within the company, which is really key, I've found, to opening doors of opportunity for that next role. And it may come from an area that you aren't expecting. And being open to that and willing to try it, I think, is really the key to building a career within the company.
Yeah, and being willing to move, right? Sometimes.
And being willing to move, you just got to roll with the punches, and you've got to seize the opportunities when they come, because you don't know when that next opportunity may arise.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about finances here, right? Because we're talking private wealth management. We need to get into the definition of that. But before we dig into it, I gotta give a shout out to one of our sponsors, all right? So Book and Street provides finance and accounting solutions for startups in the Midwest and beyond. From strategic financial support to bookkeeping and everything in between, they've got your back office covered. Let their experienced team of finance and accounting professionals help your startup get it right from the start. Learn more at bookandstreet.com and set up your free 30-minute consultation with their team today. All right. So right in line with what we're going to talk about, when folks hear private wealth management, that might be intimidating. What does private wealth management mean?
Well, I can tell you at Alliance Bernstein, it comes down to two things. And like I mentioned before, we're a little unique, I think very luckily, in that we have our nonprofit advisory group within our private wealth management business. So those two things are, if you are a nonprofit, is that you are looking for someone to engage with you in mission fulfillment that extends beyond just investment management. Okay, if you want more than just a quarterly statement in the mail from your investment advisor, Bernstein Private Wealth Management is the place for you. When it comes to individuals and families, private wealth management means you have achieved a level of financial success where you have the benefit of wealth, but you also have the complexity and the burden that tends to come with that. Now, that's a good problem to have, but it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. Even really sophisticated folks are suddenly faced with some really complicated, both personal and professional decisions that they have to make. And they oftentimes realize that they need an advisor that they can trust to help them put a framework around those decisions and make educated choices. So we tend to work with, like I said, on the individual and family side, those people that have hit a level of success where their financial lives have become complex and complicated, and they want their time back to focus on the things that they love doing. They don't necessarily want to be in the weeds. They want to do the things that they enjoy and the things that oftentimes made them wealthy in the first place. So I'll stop there, but does that help, Elio?
It does. It helps a whole lot. Now, here's the temptation with me. I can't speak for anybody else, right? I know I need a lawyer when it comes to writing contracts, right? Now, I might wing it. I might go to LegalZoom. I might go to Rocket Lawyer. But depending on how much money we're talking about here, I'm going to go to a professional. Same thing for accounting. Hey, if it's a couple transactions a month, maybe I can wing it with QuickBooks. I can kind of do it on my own. But at a certain point, if I want to raise money, I know I need to bring in a professional. The tempting thing about managing money is it seems simple enough. I know how to make it, but it's a different game with trying to save it, grow it, and preserve it. So for folks out there who might be having success, but with success in some cases comes ego and they think they can do all this themselves, when is the right time to start thinking about when to look to an advisor, both on the not-for-profit side and for individuals?
I would say on the not-for-profit side, it's when your organization has developed a pot of money. We can call it an endowment, or it may just be what has historically been almost like a checking or savings account that has reached a level where you know that you could be doing a lot more with that money. There's not necessarily a magic number, but you know that you've got the responsibility and the opportunity to do something with the resources that you have.
Yeah, and that's great. So let's pivot now, because we know, there's a role of an advisor regardless of how a not-for-profit is established, right? Namely, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be focused on growing the endowment. It could be also consulting on how to spend the funds that you do have in a prudent and wise way. All right, let's pivot to the founders or business people who are reaching a certain level of success. What are the signs that hey, this is a good time to be reaching out to an advisor?
If you are starting to feel like you don't have the time or the mental capacity to really be thinking strategically about your personal finances, that's a good time to start that conversation. Because money is such an emotional topic for a lot of people. It's one of those things that can make you want to stick your head in the sand and just hope for the best. And especially if you are a founder, you're a business owner, you have other people that are relying on you for their own income and their own personal well-being. If you start feeling that just sort of tug of things are maybe getting a little bit out of control and I just need a little help putting some order to this financial house, for lack of a better way to put it, that is a great time to reach out to an advisor. If you're a founder and you realize you've got a great idea, it's getting a lot of traction, and you can see an exit, whatever that exit might look like in the future, there are a handful of things you can do to prepare yourself personally, financially, for that exit that take time to line up in advance, and some tax saving things related to giving and philanthropy at the point of that liquidity event that you need to do in advance of a transaction in order for them to work, to be valid. And so reaching out to an advisor, 2 weeks before your sale it's if you haven't done it yet, it's a good time to do it, but it's a lot better, and you will achieve a lot more peace of mind and an alignment of your values if you're able to start that relationship far in advance of the actual exit.
Now, as human beings, we love stories. We can talk about this stuff in the abstract as much as we want, but sometimes it takes a story for it to hit home. So in your experience as a private wealth manager, we'll start with a not-for-profit who takes the advisor approach that you've seen. They were very thoughtful about approaching an advisor, and how did that benefit them? And let's just take in the last 18 months, right? Where the fundraising landscape, the world landscape completely gets turned around.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have an advisor in place, they look completely different. And then let's take it from maybe a founder perspective, right? What have you seen when folks take the advisor approach? Let's say they sell their business and they have an advisor in place. We'll go with not-for-profit first.
Yeah, we'll start with not-for-profit first. So here's a concrete example. Nonprofit organization has a volunteer board, has a paid staff, but not a lot of capacity or just sophistication when it comes to investment management within the paid staff. They had an investment advisor that was literally sending them quarterly statements and maybe calling once a year. That was the extent of the interaction. Their investment policy statement, which most nonprofit organizations have or should have if they have any meaningful assets, existed. They knew it existed because they saw it referenced in their audit, but they literally couldn't find the document. And their investment advisor couldn't find the document, which begs the question of how do you know you're investing in line with your investment policy statement if literally no one can find it or really knows what it says. And this particular organization has a social justice mission to it. And we talk a lot about it at Bernstein Private Wealth Management, aligning your mission with your values. And one of the ways that you can do that is through using socially responsible investing. And this organization had heard about this and wondered if their current investment portfolio was aligned with their goals, their organizational goals and values. So we were able to come in, still couldn't find the investment policy statement, decided it was time to start, let's just start from scratch. So did an evaluation of their existing finances, worked with the executive team and the board to create an investment policy statement that was appropriate for an organization of its size, and that included socially responsible investing parameters that fit with its mission. So the executive team and the board felt good, like we are using our resources to further the ideals in the world that we believe in. And then we were doing a ton of board members.
Because I gotta play the devil's advocate, right? Great story, I love it. Invest in terms of your values. Let me challenge you on that. Is there a risk, right? I mean, you're chartered to kind of invest socially, but what if that means, from a fiduciary responsibility standpoint, competing with that value, that you're going to underperform? Where does an advisor, right? There are certain stocks that are off the table based on values, but it impacts returns potentially. How does an organization balance those two things?
So that's actually a very hot topic these days. It's a great question. So responsible investing doesn't necessarily mean that there's a trade-off between investment return and social improvement. And actually, you can find data going both ways, but we have found that companies that are investing responsibly tend to outperform those that aren't. So like I said, you can find data going in both directions on that front. But we firmly believe, based on our portfolios, that you don't necessarily sacrifice return in order to invest responsibly.
And do you think the financial services industry as a whole, right, is responding to that push for more socially conscious or a socially responsible investment options? Do you feel much like, the organic food movement? You see a lot of options there, and there are other things, right? If the market is asking for these options, do you find that these options are being created to meet the need?
Yes, yes, it's obviously the supply and demand in the market that addresses all services and products. And there is definitely increased interest in socially responsible investing, especially over the last 18 months. So folks now have a lot more options when it comes to socially responsible investing than they did, a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And at Bernstein, we've got a variety of options folks can choose from, depending on their particular goals, as do most other financial services firms at this point. I mean, that mission fulfillment and aligning values and resources is something that I think the challenges of the last year and a half have really brought to the forefront in a really meaningful way.
That's great. All right, now let's talk about the personal, right? For the founder who does it right? Are they coming to you for advisory services ahead of the sale? What can you share in terms of your experience of a founder who took the right approach and ended up benefiting from it?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example with some real numbers. So when you start a company, let's say you own shares in that company, it's privately held. There are ways where you can donate those shares to charity in advance of a sale and minimize your taxes that come along with that sale. A lot of folks think about only donating cash to nonprofit organizations or donating appreciated, publicly held and publicly traded stock. You can donate a lot of different kinds of assets to charity, and a lot of folks just don't know that. And so working with an advisor to work through the planning for that and identifying even what is the right amount for me to donate to charity. How do I make sure I don't donate too much? How do I make sure that I'm going to have enough for me and my family after this sale is a big part of what we do. And one of the things that I find most meaningful is helping people figure that out so that they can make gifts that they feel great about. Never look back.
That's amazing. And taxes are in the news. So, or proposed taxes are in the news that people who are interested in building wealth might be thinking about. Maybe we won't get into tax law in depth, but I do want to explore decision-making when taxes are a factor, all right? But we're going to go to another announcement from a sponsor, and I'll be right back to talk taxes with you. When companies large and small need to solve technological challenges, they turn to AWH. AWH has the experience and expertise to help your company create innovative and disruptive products for the web, mobile, and IoT. Leveraging a deep understanding of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, combined with the creativity that comes from their entrepreneurial DNA, AWH gives their clients the competitive advantage. Visit awh.net today and tell them about your project. So I want to pivot back to not-for-profits and the importance of financial planning and management. Again, I go back to the pandemic and how things can rapidly change. So let's say you're encountering somebody, because it's not, hey, this arbitrary number, you need to meet it before I talk to you. You're talking to people at all stages of their business, and you welcome those conversations. Let's say you meet a not-for-profit and they're small. What are some of the things that you're talking about with clients like that who want to get to the stage where they're now having to think about, endowment and fund management and all of the other things that you could provide assistance to them for? What are you starting to talk to those clients about as they grow their not-for-profit?
You always have to start with where where are you now? And some nonprofit organizations have a really good sense of their financial picture right now, in the moment. And for some organizations, that's maybe more of a nuanced question that requires a little bit more digging. And if we, one of the things I think we learned over this, the course of this pandemic, is that having multiple streams of revenue can be really helpful to weather a crisis when a specific type of revenue, call it in-person fundraising events, for example, become just impossible, or no longer a part of that revenue plan. And so having a really good sense of what's your income, what are your expenses, and how are you earning that income, whether it's charitable giving or program service income, depending on the nonprofit, and having a really good sense of how can we diversify that income if that's appropriate for the organization, and how can we reach our donors in a way that is meaningful to them and meets them where they are, given the inability, at least at this point, to have your fundraising gala that you've relied on for a huge chunk of your fundraising revenue in the past. So it requires putting on a different hat and really trying to make sure, do we have the data on our donors to be able to do meaningful outreach and talk to our donors about what matters most to them, to facilitate and build that relationship. So it's a much different conversation today than it was 18 months ago. A lot of organizations were really focused on those one or two huge in-person events, which were awesome. But going forward, that's going to be a much more difficult revenue model to sustain.
All right, so we got one more break, but when I come back from this break, I do have an important question for you. Maybe we could break the internet with this, but where is the money? All right, we're going to tell not-for-profits where the money is and where those folks with the money want to invest, right? Or want to give. All right, so final break here. And this is being brought to you by a great sponsor of the show. At 614 Startups, we're going through a lot of changes. Some of these changes include a new website, a rebrand, which is coming pretty soon, updates in marketing, and growth strategy. Undertaking all the marketing that you have to do as a founder or even with a team can be so overwhelming. So naturally, we turn to our sponsor, Studio MFP, for help. If you're ready to take your branding and marketing to the next level, check them out for a free consultation at studiomfp.com and start growing your business today. All right, so the billion-dollar question right now, Natalie, where is all this wealth, and how can not-for-profits build a plan to present to people who are looking to give to charitable organizations? Where should they be looking if they're having a hard time fundraising right now?
So the wealth is out there. And one thing that we've seen over the last 12 months is that people are very willing to give. We actually saw an uptake in charitable giving over the last 12 months. When people see a need, they see a crisis, they are motivated to give. So the money is out there. The trick for nonprofits is to figure out who their ideal donor is. What does that person care about? And that person might be an existing donor that's in the database, that has a relationship with someone at the organization. But what does that person care about? What would they put serious money behind to fund? Is it something specific? Do they have a project in mind or a program that might be really relevant and hit them in the heart, where they feel like, I am making a change, and would be willing to write that huge check? Or is that person a donor, potential donor, that has not had an existing relationship with the organization? And how do you use all of the data analytics that exist in the world today to find that person and create a message that will appeal to them? And how do you connect with that person, listen, ask the right questions to find out what is important to them, and then brainstorm ways where you can create a program, to fund something special for that person. It may be general operating support if they are someone who just believes so strongly in the mission of the organization that they don't need a specific one thing, but it's finding that person that believes in your mission. And so I think fundraising in the nonprofit world is really going to take a turn towards being more data focused and making investments in, customer relationship management software, the kinds of systems you need as a nonprofit to track your donors and to have insights into what is important to them is going to be well worth the investment going forward.
That's amazing. I used to be a big X-Files fan. The truth is out there. Well, this is the Wealth Files, and the wealth is out there. Natalie, thank you for hanging out with me. Oh, we have a big announcement. Bernstein is now a sponsor of the show. So thank you so much for supporting local media and 614 Startups. And we also have a special panel coming up because I have a soft spot in my heart for not-for-profits. I think the information that you're putting out is very important, particularly for our smaller not-for-profits, right? I think there's a very important role that not-for-profits play in society between what the government does and what private business does. There's this gap, right? And that gap needs to be filled by robust charitable organizations who are well-managed and growing and serving the needs of the folks that they've targeted or the mission that they're hoping to accomplish. So I know we have a date. We're working out details. We have some guests, but that not-for-profit panel discussion is coming in June. Anything you want to share on that?
I want to say thank you for all the work you do with 614 Startups. Bernstein Private Wealth Management is committed to really being a good corporate citizen in Columbus and everywhere. And we appreciate the work that you do and the work that the ecosystem does to really support both nonprofits and business owners in Columbus. I'm super excited about the panel and super excited to be partnering with you and looking forward to what the rest of 2021 holds.
Yeah, definitely some power players on that panel. Guys, we're going to be putting that announcement on social media, on the website, so there's going to be no way that you're going to miss it. And please, when the information comes out, share it with the not-for-profit kind of colleagues in your life and friends and associates. We want everybody to be there, everybody to participate. We're going to have some of the most knowledgeable people in the not-for-profit world talking about things from fiduciary responsibility to fundraising and to managing that money once it comes in. All right. Thank you so much, Natalie. This has been a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and hang out. We're going to do a little bit of a post show. All right, folks, that's a wrap. You can find this in all our episodes on our website, 614startups.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. Oh, did I mention we have a YouTube page? You need to go to YouTube. That's where this video is. That's probably why you're watching it. Or maybe even you're watching it on our website. So follow us on YouTube as well. Don't forget to subscribe and write a review when you do engage with our content. If you would like these episodes sent directly to your inbox, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter on the website. To engage in the community, you can follow us on LinkedIn. We're super active on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and again, YouTube. And we're everywhere at 614 Startups. So join the conversation. For sponsorship opportunities and collaborations, we're here. All right, so just email us at info@614startups.com. All right, until next time, peace.